Pat Morita. You won't believe how close the world came to never meeting Mr. Miyagi. Picture this: a beloved, quietly powerful character that changed a movie and maybe a generation almost didn't happen, because Hollywood couldn't stop seeing the actor as a joke. That actor was Pat Morita, and the fight to make him Mr. Miyagi is one of those Hollywood stories where stubbornness, a single tape, and quiet truth beat the loudest doubts. For years, audiences knew Pat Morita as a funny guy, the sort who steals scenes with quick lines and a grin. That reputation followed him like a shadow. Executives loved his comic timing. They didn't love the idea of him carrying the emotional weight of a father figure, a war-scarred mentor. To them, Mr. Miyagi needed gravity, not gags. Enter Jerry Weintraub, the producer who flat out didn't want a comedian in the role. In his head, the part demanded someone who looked and felt like lived experience, someone audiences would instinctively trust. Pat was not that person, in their eyes. But movies get made by people who see different things. John Avildsen, a director who'd already proved he had a feel for heart and grit, had another idea. He saw The Karate Kid as more than karate. It was a story about healing, mentorship, and quiet courage. He wanted authenticity, not a resume. So he pushed. Every actor should be tested, even the names the studio had dismissed. That insistence is what opened a door that had been locked for weeks. When Pat finally got his shot, it was near the end of the audition list, the "why not" option. He walked into a bare room to find John Avildsen alone with a camera, not a panel of executives. No set dressing, no applause, just a single lens and a director who wanted something raw. Pat didn't try to perform. He talked. He told stories. He let the weight he'd carried for years, rejections, tiny gigs, and the ache of being typecast show through. What came through on tape, it wasn't showmanship. It was a man's life quietly revealing itself. His voice, a little weary and careful, had the exact rhythm the character needed. That handful of minutes changed everything. John played the footage for the studio. The room that had scoffed was suddenly silent. Even Jerry Weintraub, the same man who had refused to consider, Pat leaned forward and said, "That looks like Miyagi." The tape didn't argue. It simply showed the truth. From then on, the conversation stopped being about risk and started being about how to protect the performance they finally had. But one great tape doesn't close every doubt. The studio pushed for more tests, 5 in total, because a film needs someone who can do it every day, under pressure, for months. Could Pat repeat that calm? Could he hold those pauses and silences when the cameras rolled and schedules screamed? With quiet discipline, he did. Each test was a proof. A slow cadence here, a patient look there, a tiny pause that meant everything. Executives who'd once expected a comic to crack under stress found themselves watching the same steady man again and again. The chemistry test with Ralph Macchio changed the game. The producers needed to know that Miyagi wasn't just a piece with good lines. He had to be a real anchor for Daniel. When Ralph and Pat read together, something clicked. Pat's steady calm gave Ralph the room to be young, messy, unsure. Ralph's energy gave Pat something to protect. Their exchanges weren't rehearsed. They felt inevitable. That father-son rhythm, the small jokes, the long pauses, the trust that built without words, gave the movie its heart. Costume sealed it. When Pat put on the simple clothes and let the beard and posture settle, people stopped seeing a comedian and started seeing a man shaped by life. It wasn't magic. It was revelation. That look helped everyone accept what had been there all along. By the final, stripped-down screen test, no dressing, no score, just camera and actors. The room was stunned into quiet. The performance was honest enough to stand alone. Silence replaced debate. Doubt turned into respect. One scene that haunted the set was the drunk Miyagi moment, the night Pat poured out the character's pain, loss, loneliness, and the history that made Miyagi both fragile and unbreakable. Some execs worried it would slow the film. Pat fought to keep it. Why? Because it made Miyagi a man, not a mask. When he performed it with a voice that trembled but never cracked, the crew watched, as if the actor had peeled back a whole life in 5 minutes. That scene gave audiences the explanation for Miyagi's steadiness. Inside, there was sorrow that had been made into strength. But the movie wasn't only sorrow. There was a tiny, perfect magic in the fly and chopsticks bit. A simple gag that became an emblem of the film's philosophy. Patience beats speed, focus beats force. Pat played it so calmly that the humor landed warm, not mean. On set, the two actors laughed for real. Behind the camera, the crew laughed too. Those moments showed Miyagi's gentleness. He taught with a smile, not scorn. Off camera, Pat became more than a co-star to Ralph. He became a mentor. Ralph was young and suddenly famous, and Pat guided him through nerves and the strange new world of movie sets. Their off-screen friendship made their on-screen bond believable. It wasn't acting that made the movie work. It was life mirrored in art. When the final call came, it sounded different from what Pat had expected. Jerry Weintraub, the man who once refused to hear his name called to congratulate him. "I almost made the worst mistake of my life," he reportedly said. For Pat, this wasn't victory in a Hollywood sense. It was validation. He didn't gloat. He thanked them. That quieter moment of grace is what defined him. This whole story, the near miss, the tape, the fit tests, the scenes that could have been cut, reminds us of something simple. Art isn't a box you check. Sometimes, the right person for a role arrives despite reputations, resumes, or labels. Sometimes, what looks like a risk is actually the only path to truth. And here's the part that most people never hear about: what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. When Pat Morita finally stepped into the spotlight as Mr. Miyagi, his life changed overnight. The film became a global hit, and suddenly, the man who once couldn't get a serious audition was being nominated for an Academy Award. But even with all that success, Pat stayed humble. He used to say that the real reward wasn't the fame, it was being able to show the world what he was capable of when someone finally believed in him. For an actor who had spent years in the shadows, that role didn't just make a career, it healed something personal. Still, Pat's journey after The Karate Kid wasn't all easy. Hollywood, as quick as it is to celebrate, can also forget just as fast. He continued to act, to tell stories, and to make people laugh, but he always carried Miyagi with him. It wasn't a burden, it was an honor. Fans would stop him on the street, bow slightly, and say, "Wax on, wax off." And he never got tired of it. He once said that Miyagi represented the kind of man he wished more people could be: patient, kind, and strong, without needing to prove it. In many ways, that's who Pat Morita was too. If that moved you, do this: like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into stories that changed movies and the people who made them. Want more behind-the-scenes tales like this? Say the word, and we'll keep digging.